Amen. Morning. So a couple of things. First of all, and it's a little bit of housekeeping, but Daniel is experimenting with the camera in the back, and that's why I've got this little floofy thing on my shirt. We have heard that you would like some of these classes to be recorded, so we're kind of experimenting with how to do that. Just a fun fact, I thought like 3 or 4 minutes ago as I was exiting the restroom that I don't know how to turn this off. So, our first video is going to be a wild one. I trust editing. I'm happy to see you this morning. I am a little bleary-eyed. We had a family movie night last night, and it was awesome. And I went to bed exhausted, and then woke up like an hour and a half in, and my back was like doing Cirque du Soleil stuff. And so I tried to like toss and turn, ended up sleeping on the couch voluntarily. That was a new experience. But I am grateful to be with you this morning. I thank you for taking time out of your Sunday morning to spend time, not just with your church family, but also here with us. I want to give a little disclaimer and maybe a little overview of what we're doing. I always hope that each week we've got people who haven't been here previously. I hope that we have people who may even be unfamiliar with who we are and what we're doing. You are in the middle of a quarter where Ken and I are covering leadership principles, biblical leadership principles. Because of the nature of this class, we have some flexibility as to how we approach these subjects. If you've been with us for years, this will be familiar to you. If you're just joining us, we tend to take a quarter where we deep dive on a particular text, a book, a couple of books in Scripture, but we'll deep dive on text. And then the next quarter, we take an application quarter where we take a little more of a thematic view. This is an application quarter. And I say that because if you're just joining us, we're about to talk biblical leadership. And the stories, the Jesus moments I'm going to use this morning are filled with like deep theology and beauty. And it's this really nuanced picture of not just who Jesus was and what he came to do, but our relationship to him. And the reason I'm telling you all that is I'm focusing on this kind of obscure part of these passages. That obscure part is leadership principles. Okay, so if you get today and you hear me talking about Jesus and the woman at the well and you think, well, that's not the primary takeaway. Yes, I know. There's beauty in these passages. We are focusing specifically on the leadership aspects. Okay, so please hear me. We're not going to talk about the deeper meaning and really the primary meaning of a lot of those passages. We're going to focus on the biblical leadership. It's not because we're unaware of the true beauty in those passages. It's because we're focusing on something really specific. All right. I don't know if I needed to say anything else. I feel like that was the only thing that, and for the record, that hasn't been an issue. I just feel a compulsion to tell you that we know the deeper theology stuff is there, but that's not where we're going today. All right, I also wanted to mention that we had a weird scheduling thing where Ken and we tried to go 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. This one, it wasn't going to work out that way, but it gave me an opportunity to spend 3 weeks in a little sub-series on relational leadership. Last week, if you missed our class last week, we looked at the inner world of a relational leader, which basically, I'll give you, so here's your Cliff's Notes if you missed last week. You can't fix other people if you can't fix yourself. Okay, you can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself. The idea that we really wanted to drive home last week was leadership begins internally, not externally. People don't follow simply external leadership. They follow an internal compass that's oriented in the right direction. So last week was about that. This week is about understanding and elevating people. This little sub-series, relational leadership, is personally what I find to be the most effective, most important parts of leadership, and that is the relational part. Leadership without relationship is dictatorship. Okay, leadership without relationship is power dynamics. Leadership without relationship it can be abusive. Leadership without relationship is not inspirational. Leadership without relationship may produce external results. It will not produce internal change, and it will not produce multi-layered success. So what I need you to hear in this little sub-series is that your ability to relate to other human beings will absolutely be correlated to your ability to lead them. There are lots of people, and it's something that when you really start to dwell on it, it's something that can challenge the way you view the world. There are some of the most intelligent people with the best ideas who couldn't lead themselves out of a paper sack. Some of the most intelligent people with the best ideas, with good nature, who struggle to lead. And in that case, it's not because they're not intelligent, it's not because their ideas are bad, it's not because their heart is misaligned, it's because part of leadership is the ability to relate to other human beings and to then help move those other human beings from where they are to where they can get. Okay, so that's what we're doing over this little sub-series. I also wanted to make sure you understood, and you're gonna see this definition on the first slide of every week. This is about emotional intelligence. Relational leaders without emotional intelligence are only capable in places where all that matters is the bottom line. Okay, if you're producing widgets in a factory, then your emotional intelligence in terms of your leadership is not quite as important. Now, it is important, but it's maybe not quite as important. Any other type of leadership requires a high level of emotional intelligence. All right, my other disclaimer, and you've heard this every week we've done this series, but I'm gonna reiterate it. This is not about church leadership. It is about church leadership, but it's not about church leadership. This is not about corporate leadership. This is not about family leadership. It's about all of those things. Okay, so if you're sitting here thinking today, well, I'm not really a leader, I just kind of sit and enjoy the world around me, I'm not really in a leadership position, my response to you is, I would imagine you are in some capacity. Do you have kids and grandkids? Do you have neighbors? Do you have friends? Do you have a job where there are people in your orbit where you influence their lives? Folks, you have leadership opportunities that we're gonna hope to help you recognize as we get deeper into this series. Emotionally intelligent leaders are these things. They are aware, they're stable, they're relationally responsive, and they're vision guided. Now, next week, I'm already almost done with next week. I'm excited about next week because we're going to talk about vision. So if you are, if you're going to skip a week, skip Ken. Be here next week. All right. I was going to make a joke with Ken up here about how he saw my notes because there's a meat biscuit book up here. This is what I base my classes off of. All right, our core theme for today is relational leaders see people accurately and then they respond in ways that help them flourish. Relational leaders are about other people. So week one, we talked about emotional regulation, we talked about humility, we talked about self-awareness. This week, we are gonna move out into something that is not as natural as I think it should be, and the nature of our culture is moving us away from it, which is awareness of others. We spend most of our day in a narcissism machine that kind of forces us inward. And then we're surprised that we don't get along as well as we once did. It shouldn't be a surprise to us. All right, so to open up our conversation for today, I'm gonna ask a question, and I would love to hear your immediate feedback. Now, if we did this for like 30 minutes, I imagine we could get some depth, but I'm just curious to hear the first thing that pops in your head. I want you to think about somebody in your life. Maybe it was a family member, maybe it was an employer, maybe it was a friend. Someone who brought out the best in you, okay? Now, I know it's a nuanced answer, but specifically, what do you remember? What'd they do that had that effect on you? Yeah.
They encouraged me always.
Encouraged you.
Never a discouraging word ever.
Never a discouraging word. Good. What else?
They loved me.
Can you tell me more about that word?
I mean, it was just unconditional love. That I trusted them, kind of like they served.
Unconditional love. Good. What else?
They noticed when I was doing something right.
Noticed when you were doing something right. Did they notice when you were doing something wrong?
Yes.
Interesting. I can ask my mom that question. Other thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
You just answered it. We had kids.
We had kids. The kids brought out the best in you? How'd they do that?
By us having to adjust our lives to raise our future.
Adjust your lives to raise. Can I speak in generalities for a second? But I assume this is what you're talking about. Your kids brought out the best in you because for the first time in your life, you had something outside of yourself that was more valuable than what you saw on the inside. That is to me, that's the goal. And I think that is why, that relationship is so powerful as it relates to what we're talking about today. Anything else? Any other thoughts? What happened? Yeah, go ahead.
Respect you as an equal.
Say it again.
To respect you as an equal.
To respect you as an equal, even when you weren't, probably, yeah? Is that what it was an implication, but is that what you're saying? Man, I think back through my own experience with leadership, and I think about some of the people who I would answer this, who brought out the best in me. And it was interesting how often it started with that, them treating me like I mattered when I didn't, and treating me like I had abilities and potential that weren't on the surface when I didn't see that. Really good. Any other thoughts? Yes?
Challenge me to get out of my comfort zone.
Oh, challenge it. So I was waiting for that because we've gotten a lot of like that I was amazing and they said so. But the idea that they pointed out like, hey, you're too comfortable and you need to do something different. I couldn't agree more. So I'll mention this as we get into it, but you guys are subject to me because Ken asked me to teach 8 years ago and I had no interest in it. But I don't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but Ken said, I need you in the chapel class. And I said, I disagree. But at the time, he was an elder, and so I did what he did. He's not anymore. I don't have to listen to him anymore. So, but he did challenge me to step outside of my comfort zone, and we've talked about that a couple of times since, but I'm grateful for that. Any other thoughts? Yes, Ellie.
Someone in my shop saw that I was emotionally reacting to everything, and he put a couple of books in my hands to teach me how to be value-driven, which allowed me to go from thermometer to thermostat.
Yeah, value-driven. It's amazing when you get your attention off of what's happening in front of you, move it into something bigger. The value aspects of what you're doing in the short term get a lot simpler. Good. All right. Here's what I wanted you to hear. Okay, if you don't have an answer to this question, or if you didn't offer your answer to this question, what I wanted you to hear is that most people connect to relational leadership way before they connect to your authority or your intelligence or your competence. Okay, so someone who brought out the best in you, you know what none of you said? None of you said, oh, they were brilliant and dynamic. None of you said they brought out the best in me because they were amazing at what they did. So what are you telling me? You're telling me that the people who brought out the best in you allowed the conversation to be about you, which is what great leaders do. Great leaders, when you're in a room with them, they make you feel important. They make you feel seen. They make you feel heard. Surface level leaders who I don't trust and who you should not trust either, are leaders who always seem to turn the conversation back to them and their greatness instead of talking about you and instead of listening to you. My guess is all of you connected to those people because of how they treated you. So why does all this matter? Great leaders emerge because of a relationship first, and the kingdom needs leaders of high character to emerge in the next generation. We need leaders of high character. And let me tell you why I worry at times about what leadership in the kingdom looks like for the next generation. If you go back through like sociological research, there's one study in particular that always draws my attention. It was a combined effort between the University of Wisconsin and the University of Michigan. They started asking fourth grade kids back in like 1955, what do you want when you grow up? That's a real simple prompt, and it wasn't a whole lot of extra stuff. It was just that. Starting from 1955 up until the turn of the millennium, early in the 2000s, the answers were the same. Now, they were unique to the kids, but the answers were all kind of oriented towards family and security. Those were the two boxes that those kids' answers were put in for 50 years. Starting with smartphones and social media, there was this really hard pivot, and it only took about 3 years to get there, where all of the answers were oriented towards fame and notoriety. So it went from I want safety and I want security, I want a family, to I want to be famous. I want people to see me online. I want to be noticeable. Well, that's a problem. It's a problem because the world that kids are growing up in now doesn't tend to value relationship. It tends to value big, bold language on a screen. If you ask the average elementary or middle school kid, what do they want to do with their life right now? The answer to those questions is really hard to pin down unless they say YouTube. They want to be an influencer. That one's pretty easy, and you'll get a lot more of that than you would expect. Now, the reason that matters to me is there are some people doing good work online. I'm not, there's some people doing good things, giving positive things. There's a lot of garbage, but there's people giving decent things, doing decent things online. You may lead people in a certain way, but real, true kingdom leadership is about relationship. It's about relationship first. And to me, the more we can emphasize this with a younger generation, the more likely it is that we help foster. Now, I believe the Lord's going to raise leaders in the kingdom with or without our help, but I would prefer to be on the with our help part. All right, so what do great leaders do? So great leaders, here's where we're going to focus today. Today we're going to focus on 3 things that great relational leaders do as they identify people around them, as they relate to the people around them. Again, last week was internal, this week is external. The first thing that great relational leaders do is they notice people, which is not as simple as you would expect. In order to illustrate this point, I want to go to John chapter 4. There's a story that covers verses 1 through 45. It's the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman. I'm going to read a part of this passage that I want to focus on, and then we'll summarize some of the rest. But before I do, I had like dozens of moments in Scripture I could have gone to. Jesus' entire time on this earth was about noticing people that the rest of society didn't notice. Jesus' time on this earth was marked by noticing people who didn't feel worthy of being noticed. Okay, so if we could look at each one of those individually for the salvation angles. We could look for the spiritual angles. We're just going to focus on the surface level, which is Jesus spent his time on this earth seeing people, and we should try to do the same. All right, so here's a brief portion. I'm going to read starting in verse 7. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans?" Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that's saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." So Jesus, from this moment, goes on to have a really deep theological conversation with this woman. She asks important questions. He correctly identifies her checkered history. And then we get to the end of this story, and there's a verse I want to emphasize, which is verse 39. This story starts with Jesus noticing someone that he should not culturally have noticed. And here's where it ends. In verse 39, many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did. Now, again, a lot of beautiful theology in this passage, but here's what I want you to hear in terms of leadership. Jesus, in this one short story, creates a leader out of a broken, invisible woman. People meet Jesus because of his interaction with this woman. It all started because Jesus saw a woman who culturally he simply should not have seen. Okay, there was a huge cultural divide. That's the first thing. But I do want to emphasize the fact that she's drawing water in the middle of the day means that she was likely a social outcast as well, and yet Jesus notices her. Great leaders should strive to emulate that, to notice everyone, especially those that the world around you isn't noticing. All right, so what does it mean? I'm going to give you some thoughts that I had. And I had a slide for each one of these. I took it off because it was overwhelming. It was too much. So I'm just going to talk to you for a second. Okay, recognizing people means that the first thing you're going to do when you interact with a human being is to listen and try to connect to their experience and their story and not immediately trying to make it about you. Okay, now here's the part that I need you to hear. Most of the time when you do that, it's not because you're bad people. It's not because of ill intent. When we meet another human being, you know what we tend to do? We tend to get a little awkward and a little weird, and we're not really sure what to say. And some of you are amazing at it. Some of you are not as amazing at it. And it's okay. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of clunky with it sometimes. And I realize that that's kind of a weird statement for a dude who works in like therapy. But here's the problem. If you want to tell me your deepest, darkest secrets, that I'm super comfortable with. You want to talk to me about like a random thing you saw on TV? I don't know how to do that. My eyes kind of glaze over, and I would rather talk about, you got any trauma you want to unpack? Let's do that. So to me, it's important to recognize when you're talking to another human being, we spend way more time trying to think of the next interesting thing to say, as opposed to just listening to the other person talk. So noticing people means doing that. It also means noticing that their personality is not yours, their background is not yours, their struggle is not yours, their viewpoint is not yours. And okay, so that's the easy part. The easy part is recognizing that all the things that make them up are not you, and that's not what matters. Here's the most important part. You are not the metric. Okay, if there's a phrase I can put in your head, you are not the metric. Meaning, your history and your life is not the ideal, and you have to now compare your story with their story, and where there is inconsistency, you need to bring them into your story. Your life is not the metric. Okay, that's a hard thing for us to wrap our brains around, but it's really important for relational leadership. There was a slide, and I think it's modern language. I think you'll understand what I'm saying. But I debated whether I would use this, so I'm tired. Let's use it. I had a slide that said, acknowledge that you are not the main character. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. You are not the main character. There is a disease in our culture that I like to refer to as main character syndrome. I'm not the only one who refers to it as that, but I like that phrasing. Main character syndrome. What does that mean? That means we have this weird tendency to walk through life believing that I am the main character, all of you are bit players. I'm the main character, so what happens to me is what everybody cares about. All the role players, the bit players, they play an important role, but if their plot twist takes a turn, nobody really cares about that. I'm the main character. Now, this is especially prominent when it comes to raising kids. I have been around youth sports quite a bit, having 2 young sons. Holy cow, they're all the main character. And they're all competing. I will never forget, as long as I live, the first exposure we ever had to youth sports was soccer, which is what they all do, because now, to tell you how and he's not with us in here this morning, but my oldest, Stockton, to tell you what kind of kid we were raising, he was not the kid who was trying to score a goal. We had to stop more than one game because he was trying to initiate group hugs. And was successful. But I will never forget a particular mom on the other team. The first thing her kid was one of those that would kind of sit and not want to participate, which is fine. He was like 5. It's fine. Didn't have to go participate. But she was not having that. So she walked out and she stopped the game and said, if you'll play with his ball, he'll probably play. So she wanted us to change the ball. And the coach was like, okay, no, that's weird. And so it was another 5 minutes and the kids sat in the grass. So then, April, you remember what she did next? So she walked over to him, she picked up his hand and walked out onto the field with him and starts moving kids out of the way so that her little angel baby can come do some soccer. And she's blocking. I have never seen a better metaphor for modern parenting. All of you other children move so that my star can be born. It's amazing. You're not the main character. Neither are your kids, neither are your successes, and neither are your failures. All right, so I hope every kid has somebody in their life for whom that kid is the main character. I hope every kid has somebody in their life who thinks that kid is the pinnacle of childhood. If you feel that way about your kid, I'm with you. I love that. I just struggle when you think I'm supposed to think the same thing about your kid. My kids are amazing and wonderful and awesome, and I hope you feel that way about your kids. I have no problem if you think to yourself, my kid is special and unique. I know that's the way God made your family to work. But where I struggle is the perspective that assumes the rest of the world should agree with that. Okay? You're not the main character. Neither is your kid. So April is sitting in the back. You're allowed to talk. It's class. She just said, I do that one time, and now it's a sermon illustration. I've already got a bed made. It'll be fine. I do want to point out, for those of you who know my wife, that is not a story about her, but it absolutely could be. All right. I don't remember what we were talking about. All right. Here's the summary point. Nobody thinks about you as much as you do. Nobody thinks about you as much as you think they're thinking about you. So we're going to use that to our advantage. We're going to use that to our advantage. What that means is when you have an opportunity to connect to another human being, instead of fixating on how you're being perceived, recognize that more than likely the conversation is going to turn based on whether or not they feel like you're listening to them. That's the way human interaction works. You know who we love? We love people who give us a chance to talk about ourselves. We love people who give us a chance to talk about our lives and to talk about our kids without constantly pivoting the conversation back to us. Okay, that's how we see people. Now, I have a couple of phrases here, or a couple of what it sounds like slides. Now, the reason I use these what it sounds like slides, this is not just an example. I use what it sounds like slides because sometimes I give these theoretical things. This is what I just did. I want to make sure you have practical, tangible, if you want to improve in this area, which some of you should probably try to improve in this area. If you want to try to improve in this area, the what it sounds like slides are how you get there. Okay? So in parenting, it seems like noticing when something is happening in your home and then giving the opportunity for the person you're noticing it to talk. You seem quieter than usual today. If April said that to me this afternoon, my response would be, I didn't sleep a whole lot last night. I can see that this is really hard. You've been carrying a lot lately. It can also be, and I gave you a theoretical one down at the bottom, it can also be recognizing that conflict, especially marital conflict is not typically right versus wrong. Those are easy. Right and wrong tends to be, it's not common that you are trying to choose between, do I save the children from the orphanage or do I commit a homicide? Orphanage, go with orphanage, 100% of the time, go with orphanage. That's not usually what we're doing. Usually we're trying to make choices that have varying degrees of right in them, and we're really debating preference. And when that's the case, folks, you and your spouse are not typically debating right versus wrong. You're debating your normal versus their normal and trying to figure out which one of them you're gonna go with. Okay, in truth, neither of them should win. In truth, your normal and my normal should be on the table while we establish one that kind of works for both of us. That's what marital conflict is supposed to look like. That means noticing that your partner's perspective is just as valuable as yours. In the professional world, it means like recognizing when the people in your charge seem despondent. Are you a school teacher? The kid who looks like something's wrong, there may be something wrong. And relational leadership looks like noticing it. It looks like identifying this issue and giving your kid a chance to talk. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You don't have to pry it out of them, but recognizing that something's going on. It looks like praising. your employees and praising people in meetings. Not just praising your employees, how about praising your peers? You ever had somebody that is your equal, your professional equal, do something really impressive and you're reluctant to praise them for it because you didn't really do the thing that they did, or because you did it and maybe it wasn't as good as them? True relational leadership, people that people trust, are willing to identify that in others even when it's not about them. How about the one on the bottom? You want a scary question? Start asking people what it's like to be around you. What's it like to be my employee? What's it like to be my student? What's it like to be my husband? What's it like to be my wife? What's it like to be my brother, my sister? That question, if you ask it honestly and won't get defensive and angry at the answer, that question can be the thing that propels you into relational leadership. And then finally, in spiritual leadership. In spiritual leadership, some of you sounds like an indictment. Some of us, I am just as guilty of this as you. Every leader, every spiritual leader in this room, every elder, every minister, we're all guilty of this on some level. We all have a tendency to believe that spiritual leadership is what I'm doing with a microphone, where you stand up in front and you preach a sermon or you lead a worship service. We don't recognize how often spiritual leadership is, that person has been here for weeks sitting by themselves. Can I sit with you? Can I have a conversation with you? Spiritual leadership means when people struggle, when they have spiritual questions, biblical questions, theological questions, meta world questions, where we remind people God's not intimidated by questions. The struggle is good. Can I be a part of the conversation? We don't say things like, hey, seeing you here with the army of children that you've brought with you is inspirational. You know, the only thing families who tote long strings of kids behind them tend to get is kind of dirty looks. I don't want to sit near that family, or, the huffs and the puffs when the kids get noisy. Folks, you've heard me say it before. The scariest sound in a church is silence. One of the most encouraging sounds in a church is noisy kids, is babies crying. You got babies crying in your church, it means that you're reaching young people and you're raising up a new generation into the kingdom. Folks, telling parents who bring a bunch of kids with them on Sundays, and for the record, we've got a number of them here. Telling them when you see them, hey, the easy thing for you to do on a Sunday morning would be to just stay home. The fact that you're here and you're bringing these kids, you walked in 10 minutes late and were noisy because you were bringing in the car seat, is an incredible testament to the commitment and fidelity that family has to being here on a Sunday morning. How often do you tell them that? Okay, that's spiritual leadership. All right, so relational leaders notice people. They also call out potential, they praise, and they encourage. I'm going to try to get through my last points really quickly, but I do have next week too, so if I end up needing to stop, we can pick it up next week. So they call out potential, they praise and encourage. In Matthew 16, this is the best place to demonstrate this, although, again, it happens in a lot of different places. Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah." Okay, that's important. I've taught this before, but if you're new with us this morning, verse 17 is really important. And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah." That's the man's name. "For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter. And on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." If you were with us a year ago, Ken and I did what I still think is one of my all-time favorite series, because it was just an enjoyable series for us to put together. But we did a whole series on the apostles, and I spent an entire class on this one interaction. So let me give you the short takeaway. The Peter that Jesus names Peter, the word Peter means rock. The guy who gets the nickname rock was the farthest thing from a rock. The guy who gets the nickname rock was the farthest thing from a rock. We use a lot of demeaning language, and I hate how we describe Peter pre this moment. We tended to use words like impulsive. One of the books we used for our prep for that series kept calling him "Look Before You Leap" Peter. He was a talented, intelligent dude with a ton of energy and a ton of ability who needed to be refined. He was not a doofus who needed to be taught, but that's kind of the way that we present Peter in Scripture. The guy, though, that gets the nickname Peter was He was bold, but unrefined. He was not steady. He was not a rock. He was not dependable. He would become all of those things, but Jesus identified it in him before he adopted those traits. Jesus calls out his potential for who he can be, which tells us that calling out potential means seeing what people can be, not just what they currently are. Folks, you've heard me talk about language with teenagers a lot. I beg you, if there's a teenager in your life, if there is a child, a preteen, an adolescent in your life, please never use definitive language. Don't call them a liar. That's finality. You're going to saddle that kid with that view for the rest of their lives. They've lied because they're kids, and kids lie, and so do adults. What's the difference? The kids don't get to yell at the adults for it. Okay? So we don't use final language. We don't call a kid a liar. We identified that a kid was not truthful. You can use the word lie, that's fine. It happened in the context of this interaction. It does not define your being. But we have a tendency to look at a 15-year-old kid and believe that what is what will always be. And I am so grateful for the people in my life who did not do that to me. Okay, question, we don't need any detail. At 15, what were the odds on me being a successfully functioning human being?
Next to none.
We don't need any detail.
I can give them.
I'm good. They got the point. I was fortunate enough to have people around me who didn't look at me as a finished product at 15. I had some people who did, but fortunately the voices in my head of the people who loved me, the voices in my head of the people who guided me was stronger than the ones who didn't like me, and there were a lot of those. This means a lot to me for obviously a lot of personal reasons. But it means a lot to me because I have had the opportunity to work with families and kids. Folks, when we use finality language, when we determine that someone's current dysfunction is forever and eternal, we keep them locked into that cycle. I know that sometimes people will fight and break those chains, but oftentimes, parents and grandparents, your voice is way more prominent than they want you to believe that it is. Do they think that you think they're a bad person? That's not going to go well. That's going to be hard to shake. So your goal as a parent is to recognize that even when it's hard, we're going to call out potential. So what does it look like? It looks like identifying the character traits that you want to see way more than identifying the character traits that you don't. We have a tendency to hyperfixate on things that we need to correct. You know the quickest way to correct behavior? Hyperfixate on the behaviors you want to see repeated. When you see a kid, when you see a spouse, fixate on the behaviors that you want to see repeated, you're likely to see them repeated. Fixate on the ones that you can't stand and want to go away, you will simply drive those behaviors underground and they'll start lying about them. Okay, so we have to be able to focus on the positives. We want to be able to change our metric. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish this point. It's already almost 10:30. I don't want to rush through my last point because I have some stuff to say here, and then we're going to pick up next week here and then finish. So, parents and grandparents, you want to praise a kid who can be a spiritual leader? You want to raise kingdom people? I need you to change the way we praise children. Okay? If you praise the A, if what matters is the grade, cheating is not only optional, it's optimal. If the A is all that matters, learning the material is secondary. Showing the grit and resolve to get there is secondary. Folks, I would so much rather have a kid struggle and get a C than to get an A without having learned the material. I would so much rather that kids struggle, but we don't like that. We like metrics. I like the A's. I like the A's. And you know what's weird about parenting? About parenting and also with grandparenting, at times, because we don't have a lot of metrics to go on, anything that we'll do as a metric we'll settle for. So as a general rule, we will equate good grades with good kid, bad grades with bad kid. Straight A student can be a sociopath, but we trust him. He makes A's. Does that one hit close to home because of my brother, who I love dearly, but who did some sociopathic stuff, but made straight A's so he never got in trouble?
Hey, remember they're recording this.
I remember sitting at the bottom of the stairs listening to him and be like, there's no way they're going to buy that. And then like, they bought it? Yeah, because he made A's. All right. So I don't remember what we were talking about. You know what? You guys can leave. I had a word with my parents and these behead. It means recognizing, if you want to praise kids, so I just talked about how you don't praise. How do you praise kids? You praise kids by recognizing, you want to tell kids they're amazing, that's great. But if that's all you're doing, you're creating kids that are hyper-reliant on praise. If your parenting is, you're special and wonderful and awesome, that's good, but if that's all you're saying, you're creating kids who are hyper-reliant on praise, and when they're not actively getting praise, won't know what to do with themselves. Okay, so how do we fix that? We fix that by saying, you're really smart, but that's not the end of the compliment. You know what comes next? You say why you said that. You give them a roadmap for that compliment. So for example, when my kid comes home with an A, my response is, man, that's awesome. You know why I'm proud of that? I'm proud of that because you were in the middle of football season and I know you had football practice, and yet I watched you stay up late to finish this assignment or to study for that test. I want to praise the process. You know why? Because there's going to be times where he does that exact same thing and comes home with a C, and I still need to praise him. Because it's about the process. All right, calling out potential in your professional leadership looks like saying things like, hey, I think you're being underutilized and I want to help you get into a better place. Your work is exceptional. Can you tell me how your work is so exceptional? It means you're gifted in ways that I'm not, even in a leadership position. It means telling a subordinate, you are gifted in ways that I am not gifted. I really want to try to harness that. And finally, in spiritual leadership, it looks like telling somebody, hey, you should be teaching. It looks like telling someone, the sound of your voice brings me to a worshipful place. It looks like telling somebody you're wise and our church needs your wisdom. It looks like telling someone people gravitate to you. Please use that for the kingdom. If you see that in a young person, please be sure you give them that statement. And then finally, it looks like your story is powerful. You should share it. Now, there's a whole story to this I'm not going to tell. But my family's history and ministry started because both of my grandfathers had somebody say that last thing to them. Both of my grandfathers were told, hey, your story should be shared. And both of these worldly, they had about the same odds of success that I had at 15. Somebody said that to them, and now there's been multi-generations of ministry because someone said that to my grandparents. Relational leaders notice people and they call out potential. I'm going to show you where we're going to pick up next week. We're going to pick up with they actually move towards rupture rather than running from it, which is a good place to pick up next week because next week we're going to move towards vision. So we're going to pause here. I'm going to finish this last point next week and then we'll move into vision. I appreciate your time. I'm going to close off with a quick word of prayer and then we'll be done for the day. Gracious Father, I come to you this morning humbled by the opportunity that you give us to spend time together as brothers and sisters, Lord, just trying to be better for you. Lord, we don't know what we're doing a lot of the time. God, I pray that as we're trying to be leaders, to raise leaders, and to more look like you, I pray that you'll let us lean into those moments where we don't know what we're doing. And in those moments, I pray that we'll simply turn to you, ask for your help, pray for your help, read for your help. And God, take those lessons and try to live them out in a way that pleases you. God, bless us in moments where we do it right and give us mercy in moments where we do it wrong. Point us back to you in all circumstances. And God, I pray a special prayer for the families and leaders in this room, that they will lead their families in a way that not only honors you, but that raises more leaders for the kingdom. Father, I ask these things through your Son. Amen. Thanks, guys.